Burn it down. Chapter 1 Repo Girl. The headlights cut through the rain like knives. Sarah Mitchell sat in her beat-up Ford pickup, engine idling, watching the address glow on her phone screen. 2247 Oak Ridge Trailer Court. Another repo job. Another person's life she was about to make worse. She killed the engine and stepped into the downpour. This was her life now. 3 years ago, she'd been signing autographs at the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. Record executives had bought her drinks. Her band's demo was making rounds at Sony. She'd worn leather jackets that cost more than her current monthly rent, and truly believed she was about to make it. Then came that night in Lexington. The gig that went sideways. The 5 whiskey shots that felt like courage. She barely remembered driving home. The red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. At court, the judge had been surprisingly lenient. 18 months probation, community service, mandatory AA meetings. But the industry? The industry had zero tolerance for liability. Her band scattered within a week. The label deal evaporated. Her manager stopped returning calls. Now she was 32 years old, living in her dead father's trailer in Harlan County, Kentucky, repossessing vehicles for a man named Dale Hutchins, who ran his car lot like a loan shark operation. The van she was looking for sat at the edge of the gravel lot, a battered white Chevy with primer spots and a cracked windshield. Sarah approached with her lockout kit, muscle memory taking over. She'd been doing this for 8 months now. Pop the lock, check for personal items, drive away. Don't think about the stories. Don't imagine the faces. She jimmied the driver's side door and climbed inside. That's when she heard breathing. Sarah froze. Her hand found the mag light on her belt, and she spun around, beam cutting through the darkness of the cargo area. A girl sat wedged between 2 amplifiers, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes wide with terror. Jesus Christ. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. The kid couldn't have been more than 17 years old, dark hair chopped short, oversized flannel jacket, and the kind of skinny that came from skipped meals. Not fashion. Behind her, the van was packed with gear. A mixing board, microphone stands, cables coiled like snakes, and a laptop duct taped to a makeshift plywood desk. Please, the girl whispered. Please don't. Sarah should have called Dale immediately. Should have called the cops. This was someone else's problem. Instead, she heard herself ask, "How long have you been living in here?" The girl's jaw tightened. What's it matter? Because I'm supposed to repo this van. Sarah kept the flashlight pointed down, less threatening. But I'm guessing you don't have another place to go. A long silence stretched between them. Rain drummed on the metal roof. 3 weeks, the girl finally said. Since I left Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook Group Home? A nod. Sarah knew the place. It had a reputation, overcrowded, understaffed, the kind of facility where kids fell through cracks. And nobody noticed until something terrible happened. I'm Casey. The girl's voice was stronger now. And I know who you are. That made Sarah blink. What? Sarah Mitchell. You wrote Gasoline Heart. That song was everything to me when I was 14. Casey shifted, and Sarah caught the glint of a silver ring through her eyebrow. I had your band's demo on repeat. You were going to be huge. The words hit harder than they should have. Sarah's throat tightened. Yeah, well, things change. No shit. Casey's laugh was bitter. You got arrested. I read about it. Everyone said you threw your career away. They weren't wrong. But you wrote songs that made people feel something real. Casey leaned forward, and in the flashlight's glow, Sarah could see the intensity in her dark eyes. That doesn't just disappear because you made a mistake. Sarah wanted to argue, to explain how completely wrong Casey was. But movement outside caught her attention. Headlights swept across the trailer lot. Damn it. Sarah killed her flashlight. Stay down and stay quiet. A Harlan County Sheriff's cruiser, rolling past. Spotlights flashing across the parked vehicles. Sarah held her breath. Beside her, Casey had gone absolutely still. The cruiser paused. The spotlight lingered on the van. Then it moved on, taillights disappearing into the rain. Sarah waited a full minute before exhaling. Why are the cops looking for you? I'm not 18 yet. Technically I'm a runaway. Casey's voice had gone flat. They'll send me back to Meadowbrook if they find me. And there's this guy there, one of the supervisors, he. She stopped. I can't go back. Something in Sarah's chest twisted. She recognized that tone. The way Casey couldn't finish the sentence. Show me what's on that laptop, Sarah said. What? You're living in a van full of recording equipment. Either you stole it to sell, or you're using it. Which is it? Casey hesitated, then reached for the laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. A moment later, a beat pulsed through cheap speakers. Duct taped to the van's walls. The track was rough, mixed on garbage equipment, but the bones were there. A driving rhythm that borrowed from trap but had an Appalachian edge like bluegrass had a baby with Atlanta hip-hop. And then Casey started rapping. Her voice was raw silk over gravel. The lyrics painted pictures growing up in the system. Faces of counselors who didn't care, the feeling of being a file number instead of a person. It wasn't polished. It wasn't radio ready. It was absolutely, devastatingly real. When the track ended, Sarah sat in stunned silence. I post them on SoundCloud, Casey said quietly. Anonymous account. Started getting plays a few months ago. Then one of them blew up like 2 million streams. Now I've got this manager trying to find me, wants to sign me to some deal. What's the manager's name? Marcus Webb. He runs a label out of Louisville called Apex Entertainment. Sarah's blood went cold. Marcus Webb is a predator. He signs kids to contracts that basically make them indentured servants. He'll own everything you make for the next 10 years. Pay you nothing, and if you try to leave, he'll sue you into oblivion. How do you know? Because he tried to sign my band. Sarah's hands clenched on the steering wheel. We almost did it too. He would have destroyed us. Casey was quiet for a long moment. So what do I do now? Sarah knew the smart answer. Call Dale, finish the repo, let the system sort Casey out. It wasn't her problem. She had her own life to rebuild or at least survive. But looking at this kid surrounded by stolen equipment and impossible dreams. Sarah saw her 17-year-old self. The girl who'd believed music could save her from a nowhere town. And a father who drank himself to death. The girl who'd been right, until she'd proven herself just as self-destructive. How many tracks you got recorded? Maybe 20. Good ones, I mean. And you want to make it in this industry? More than anything. Sarah made a decision that was either inspired or completely insane. Okay, here's the deal. I don't repo this van. I tell Dale it was already gone when I got here. You lay low for a few days while I figure something out. Why would you do that? Because 3 years ago, I had everything and I burned it all down. Sarah met Casey's eyes. And maybe I can keep you from doing the same thing. What's in it for you? The question was fair. Sarah thought about her trailer, her repo job, the way she woke up every morning. Wondering if this was all her life would ever be. You're going to teach me how to make music that actually matters to people again, Sarah said. Deal? Casey studied her for a long moment, then extended her hand. Deal. They shook in the darkness of the stolen van, rain hammering overhead, two broken people making promises they had no idea how to keep. Sarah should have known better. Should have recognized the feeling in her chest. That dangerous surge of hope that always led to disaster. But she was already in too deep to care. Chapter 2: The Manager from Hell. Sarah spent the next 2 days moving Casey and the van to an abandoned barn on the edge of her father's property. The structure was half collapsed. But the section with a roof was weatherproof enough. More importantly, it was hidden from the road by overgrown trees. And a couple decades of neglect. She brought supplies, sleeping bag, propane heater. Food from the Dollar General. Casey accepted everything with wary gratitude, like a feral cat. Slowly learning to trust. On the third day, Sarah's phone rang. Dale Hutchins. You find that van yet, Mitchell? Sarah had been expecting this call. It was gone when I got there. Lot was empty except for a few junkers. Funny thing about that. Dale's voice had gone cold. I got a call from Marcus Webb yesterday. Seems he's looking for a girl who might be connected to that van. Wondering if any of my repos had come across her. Sarah's pulse kicked up, but she kept her voice steady. What did you tell him? Told him I'd ask around. You know anything about a runaway kid? Nope. You sure about that? Because Marcus is offering a finder's fee. $500 for information leading to her location. I don't know anything. Dale, a pause. You better not be lying to me, Sarah. I gave you this job when nobody else would touch you. Don't make me regret that. The line went dead. Sarah sat in her truck outside the barn, hands shaking. $500 was probably more than Dale made on most repos. If he found out she was hiding Casey, he'd turn her in without hesitation. And if Sarah violated her probation by harboring a runaway, she pushed the thought away and headed into the barn. Casey was working on her laptop. Headphones on, fingers flying across a MIDI controller. She didn't notice Sarah until she was right beside her. We've got a problem, Sarah said. Marcus Webb is actively looking for you. He's offering money for information. Casey yanked off her headphones. How does he even know my real name? I never told him anything. He probably traced your IP address or something. These guys have resources. Sarah paced the dusty barn floor. Question is, why is he so desperate to find you? Maybe because Broke Crown hit 3 million streams yesterday? What? Casey turned the laptop around. The track listing showed one song, with a view count that made Sarah's stomach flip. It's going viral on TikTok, Casey said. People are doing these videos about overcoming trauma. And they're all using my song. Every music blog is trying to figure out who I am. Sarah scrolled through the comments. Thousands of them. Record labels tagging each other. Industry people speculating about the mysterious artist. This was exactly what Sarah had been working toward 3 years ago. The kind of buzz that could launch a real career. And Casey had stumbled into it by accident. Okay, Sarah said slowly. This changes things. You've got actual leverage now. Labels will compete for you. But how'd I even talk to them without Marcus finding me? Good question. Sarah thought about everyone she used to know in Nashville. Most of them wouldn't take her calls anymore. But there was one person who might. I know someone, she said. Jamie Rodriguez. She's an entertainment lawyer in Nashville. She used to handle contract reviews for indie artists before they signed. If anyone can help us navigate this, it's her. Reminder: if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to read more inspiring narratives about finding hope in darkness and courage to start again. New stories every week. You think she'll help? Casey asked. I think she's the only shot we've got. The drive to Nashville took 4 hours. Sarah hadn't been back since her arrest. Seeing the skyline emerge through the windshield made her chest tight. Casey spent most of the trip working on new tracks. Headphones on, lost in her own world. Sarah envied that ability to disappear into music. She used to have it too, before everything went wrong. Jamie's office was in a converted Victorian house in East Nashville. Sarah had called ahead, and to her surprise, Jamie had agreed to meet. They were buzzed through a security door and climbed stairs to the second floor. Jamie stood in the doorway of her office, same choppy black hair, same sleeve tattoos. Maybe a few more lines around her eyes. Sarah Mitchell. Jamie's expression was unreadable. Didn't think I'd ever see you again. Yeah, well, life's full of surprises. Jamie's gaze shifted to Casey. And who's this? This is Casey. She's the reason we're here. They settled into Jamie's office walls covered with framed gold records from artists she'd represented. She'd a desk buried under contracts and legal pads. Sarah explained the situation: Casey's viral track, Marcus Webb's pursuit, the need for proper representation before Casey turned 18 and lost her chance. Jamie listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, she pulled up Casey's SoundCloud page and listened to Broke Crown in its entirety. Holy shit, Jamie said quietly. This is really good. I know. How old are you, Casey? 17. 18 in 4 months. And you're currently a ward of the state? Casey nodded. Jamie leaned back in her chair. Okay, here's the reality. Marcus Webb is a bottom feeder, but he's not stupid. If he's this aggressive about finding you, he probably already has a contract drafted. The second he gets you in a room, he'll pressure you to sign, and if you do, you're screwed for years. So what do we do? Casey asked. We go on offense. Jamie's smile was sharp. If you're going viral, other labels are watching. We create a bidding situation. Get multiple offers on the table. Make Marcus compete. But here's the catch: you need professional quality demos to shop around. What you've got is good, but it sounds like it was recorded in a van. That's because it was, Casey said. We need studio time, Sarah said. But that costs money we don't have. I might know a place. Jamie pulled out her phone. There's a producer named Leon Hart who owns a studio in Germantown. He does charity work with kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. If I explain your situation, he might give you some free hours. Why would he do that? Casey asked. Because Leon's a good guy who actually gives a damn. Jamie was already dialing. Plus, if you blow up, having produced your first real tracks will be good for his reputation. The call lasted 10 minutes. When Jamie hung up, she was grinning. Leon says come by tomorrow morning. He'll give you 2 full days in the studio. After that, we see what you've got. Casey looked like she might cry. I don't know what to say. Say you're going to make the best damn tracks of your life, Jamie replied. Because this is your shot, kid. Don't waste it. That night, they stayed at a cheap motel off Dickerson Pike. Casey crashed immediately, exhausted from the drive and the weight of possibility. Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat outside the room on a plastic chair, smoking a cigarette she'd bummed from the front desk clerk. Watching semis roll past on the interstate. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you're in Nashville. I know you're with Casey. Tell her to call me. We can work something out. Marcus. Sarah's blood turned to ice. How the hell did Marcus have her number? How did he know they were here? She thought about Casey sleeping inside, finally believing she might have a chance. Thought about the kid's raw talent and impossible dreams. Then she thought about Marcus Webb's contracts. The stories she'd heard about artists who'd signed with him and disappeared into legal nightmares. Sarah deleted the text without responding. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. Chapter 3 Studio Time. Leon Hart's studio occupied the bottom floor of a converted warehouse in Germantown. The neighborhood had gentrified hard over the past decade. Boutique coffee shops next to tattoo parlors, condos rising where factories used to stand. Inside, the studio was a temple to sound. Acoustic panels covered the walls. Vintage microphones hung like religious artifacts. The mixing board looked like it could pilot a spaceship. Leon himself was a barrel-chested black man in his 50s, with salt and pepper dreads and a Memphis Tigers t-shirt. He greeted them with a handshake that could crush walnuts. Jamie says you're sitting on something special, he said to Casey. Let's hear what you got. Casey played him 3 tracks. Leon listened with his eyes closed, head nodding to the rhythm. When the last song faded, he opened his eyes. You wrote all this yourself? Yeah. How long you been making music? Since I was 13. Started on GarageBand with a stolen iPad. Leon laughed a deep, warm sound. I like you, kid. You got hunger. That's what matters in this business. Talent's common. Hunger is rare. He turned to his engineer, a thin white guy with a man bun named Chris. We're gonna spend the next 2 days making this girl a star. Clear the schedule. What followed was the most intense 48 hours of Casey's life. Leon was a perfectionist. He made Casey record vocal takes 20, 30 times, pushing her to dig deeper into the emotion behind the lyrics. He rearranged beats, layered in live instruments. A session guitarist came in to add bluegrass licks that somehow made the trap drums hit harder. Sarah watched from the couch, mesmerized. She'd been in studios before, but never like this. Leon treated Casey's music with the reverence it deserved, coaxing out brilliance Sarah hadn't known was buried in those rough demos. On the second night, around 2 a.m., Leon called a break. Casey stumbled out of the vocal booth, exhausted. You're killing it, Leon said, handing her a bottle of water. 3 more tracks and we're done. Casey collapsed on the couch next to Sarah. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, Sarah said. This is what you've been working for. What about you? Casey's eyes were heavy-lidded with fatigue. When are you going to make music again? The question landed like a punch. Sarah had been so focused on Casey's story that she'd almost forgotten her own. I don't know if I can anymore. Bullshit. Casey's voice was matter of fact. You're in here watching Leon work, and I can see it in your face. You miss this. You miss making something that matters. Sarah wanted to deny it, but the truth was obvious. Being in the studio again felt like coming home after years of exile. Every mixed track, every layered harmony, it reminded her of who she used to be before the mistakes. Before the alcohol, before the crash. Fear's a cage, Casey said, quoting one of Sarah's own song lyrics back at her. You taught me that. Before Sarah could respond, Leon called Casey back into the booth. By dawn of the third day, they had 5 studio-quality tracks. Leon burned them to a USB drive and handed it to Casey. Like he was passing the Olympic torch. These are good enough to get you meetings with any label in town, he said. But here's my advice: don't sign with the first person who offers you money. Understand your worth. And don't let anyone own your masters. Masters? Casey asked. The original recordings. If a label owns your masters, they control your music forever. You want to keep those if you can. Sarah knew this lesson intimately. Her old band had almost signed away their masters to Marcus Webb. They thanked Leon profusely. He waved them off. Just don't forget where you came from when you're famous, he said. And come back to record your album here. I'm already invested in your success. Jamie set up 3 meetings for the following week. Sony, Atlantic, and an independent label called Meridian Records. That was known for artist-friendly contracts. But first, they had to deal with Marcus Webb. The manager had been calling Sarah's phone every few hours. His messages evolved from friendly to threatening. We should talk before you make a mistake. I've already invested time in finding Casey. I deserve consideration. Don't make me take legal action. Finally, Jamie called him directly. Marcus, this is Jamie Rodriguez. I'm representing Casey now. If you want to make an offer, send it to my office. But stop harassing my client. Whatever Marcus said on the other end made Jamie's jaw tighten. Is that a threat? Because I'm happy to file a restraining order. She paused. That's what I thought. Send your offer in writing. We'll review it with the others. She hung up and looked at Sarah. He's pissed. Claims he has evidence that Casey stole equipment from Meadowbrook. And that he'll go to the police if she doesn't sign with him. Is that true? Sarah asked Casey. Casey's face had gone pale. I took the mixing board and the microphone. But they weren't using them. They were just sitting in a storage room gathering dust. While kids like me had nothing. It's okay, Jamie interrupted. We'll deal with it. Marcus is bluffing. He doesn't actually want cops involved. Because then Casey becomes unavailable to sign. It's a scare tactic. But Sarah could see Casey's hands shaking. That night, back at the motel, Casey barely touched her dinner. What if he's right, she said. What if I go to jail before I even get a chance? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. I stole from a state facility. That's probably a felony. Sarah sat down beside her. Listen to me. Marcus Webb is a bully. He's used to scaring kids into signing terrible contracts. But you're not alone anymore. You've got Jamie, you've got Leon, you've got me. We're not going to let him destroy your future. Why are you doing this? Casey's voice broke. You barely know me. Why are you risking everything? Sarah thought about the question. The easy answer was guilt, trying to save Casey to make up for saving herself. But it was deeper than that. Because 3 years ago, when my life fell apart, nobody stood up for me, Sarah said. Everyone just walked away. I don't want you to go through that. And maybe, she paused, maybe helping you is the only way I can figure out how to help myself. Casey wiped her eyes. You're going to write music again. Maybe, not maybe. Promise me. Casey's gaze was fierce. Promise me that when this is over, when I get signed or whatever happens, you're going to pick up a guitar and write a song. Sarah's throat tightened. I promise. It was a promise she had no idea if she could keep. Chapter 4. The meeting. The Sony office occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Sarah and Casey sat in a minimalist waiting room that probably cost more than Sarah's trailer. Jamie had coached them extensively, let her do most of the talking. Don't seem too eager. Remember that labels need artists as much as artists need labels. A young executive named Brad Kellerman greeted them. He was maybe 30, with a tailored suit. And the kind of teeth that came from expensive orthodontics. Casey, thanks so much for coming in. Brad's enthusiasm felt calculated. We've been blown away by Broke Crown. The engagement numbers are incredible. They settled into a conference room. Brad pulled up analytics on a massive screen. 3.2 million streams. TikTok videos using your sound have generated over 50 million views. You're trending in the right. Demographics 14 to 25, primarily female, diverse audience. He clicked to the next slide. We think you could be huge. What kind of deal are you offering? Jamie asked. We're prepared to offer a 3-album contract. $50,000 advance. Standard royalty rates, and full promotion support. Jamie didn't blink. Who owns the masters? We would retain ownership of masters. But Casey would receive artist royalties. Pass, Jamie said immediately. Brad looked startled. I'm sorry? Casey keeps her masters, or we walk. That's not how this works. It is now. Jamie stood. Thanks for your time. They were out of the building in 5 minutes. Casey was hyperventilating. Did we just turn down Sony? Yes, Jamie said calmly. Because they opened with a lowball offer. Hoping you'd be too desperate to negotiate. Trust me, they'll call back with something better. She was right. Brad called that afternoon with a revised offer. $75,000, higher royalty rates, but still wanted the masters. Tell him we'll consider it, Jamie said. But we're not deciding anything until after the other meetings. Atlantic Records offered similar terms. Meridian Records, the independent label, offered less money. But let Casey keep her masters and creative control. That's the one, Casey said after the Meridian meeting. But Jamie shook her head. Not yet. We're still missing something. What? The story. Labels aren't just buying your music, they're buying your narrative. Right now, you're a mysterious viral artist. That's interesting, but it's not complete. We need to show them who you are. I don't understand, Casey said. Jamie turned to Sarah. You're a songwriter. Write Casey's story. A song that explains where she came from, what she's overcome. Something that makes the labels see her as more than just a trending hashtag. I haven't written in 3 years, Sarah protested. Then it's time to start. They went back to Harlan. To the barn where Casey's gear was stashed. Where rain leaked through the broken roof and the smell of old hay never quite went away. Sarah brought her guitar, a battered Martin acoustic. She'd bought at 16 with money from her first real gig. She'd barely touched it since the accident. Casey set up her laptop and recording gear. They sat on overturned crates in the dusty barn. 2 musicians trying to create something from nothing. Tell me your story, Sarah said. All of it. Don't leave anything out. Casey talked for an hour. About her mother, who'd died from an overdose when Casey was 8. About the succession of foster homes, some decent, most not. About the counselor at Meadowbrook, who'd looked at her like she was broken beyond repair. About finding music and realizing it was the only language that made sense. Sarah listened, fingers absently picking out chords on the guitar. A melody was forming, something minor key and haunting, but with a defiant edge. She started humming. Then words came. They gave me a number, filed me away, said girls like me don't have much to say. But I found a voice in the static and noise. And I'm taking back all that they tried to destroy. Casey grabbed her phone, recording the rough sketch. They spent the next 6 hours building the song, Casey adding beats, Sarah refining lyrics. Both of them pushing each other to dig deeper into the emotion. By midnight, they had something raw and powerful. Not polished, but real. The kind of song that made you feel the story in your bones. We need to record this properly, Casey said. Sarah called Leon at 1 a.m. To his credit, he only grumbled a little. Before agreeing to open the studio the next day. They recorded, file number, in a single take at Leon's studio. Casey's vocals were stripped down, vulnerable. Sarah added acoustic guitar, keeping it simple. Leon layered in atmospheric production that made the whole thing feel like a confession whispered in the dark. When they finished, Leon sat back in his chair. That, he said quietly, is going to change everything. He was right. Jamie sent, file number, to all 3 labels. Within 24 hours, Brad from Sony called back. This song is incredible, he said. We want Casey. Name your terms. Jamie negotiated for 3 days. In the end, Sony agreed to $150,000 advance. Casey kept her masters, creative control over her music. And a commitment to fund a full album. It was the kind of deal most artists spent years trying to get. Casey signed the contract in Jamie's office, hands shaking as she wrote her name. Congratulations, Jamie said. You're officially a recording artist. Casey looked at Sarah, eyes shining with tears. We did it. You did it, Sarah corrected. This is your dream. Our dream, Casey said firmly. Sarah, I want you to co-produce my album. I want us to make this together. Sarah's breath caught. Casey, I don't. You just wrote a song that got me a record deal. You belong in that studio with me. Please. Sarah looked at Jamie, who was smiling. The label already approved it, Jamie said. They think having your name attached will help with marketing the mentor and the protege story. Plus, your song's getting traction too. File number is being shared all over social media. Sarah pulled out her phone. Sure enough, her name was trending on Twitter. People were digging up old videos of her band. Her songs from 3 years ago, talking about her comeback. The attention felt terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Okay, Sarah heard herself say. Let's make an album. Chapter 5: The Cost of Success. The first month of album production was a blur. They practically lived at Leon's studio, working 16-hour days crafting Casey's debut. Sarah rediscovered muscles she'd forgotten she had the ability to hear a melody in her head and translate it into reality. The instinct for what made a good song great. Casey was a sponge, absorbing everything Sarah and Leon taught her. She had raw talent, but now she was learning technique, how to control her breath, how to work a microphone, how to layer harmonies. The album was shaping up to be something special. A mix of hip-hop and Appalachian folk, trap beats under banjo riffs. Lyrics that were both deeply personal and universally relatable. They called it Broke Crown, the title track that had started everything. But success came with complications. Marcus Webb filed a lawsuit claiming Casey had stolen from Meadowbrook and that he had a verbal agreement giving him right of first refusal on her music. The suit was frivolous. Jamie tore it apart in her response. But it was expensive and time-consuming. Then there was the media attention. Entertainment blogs ran stories about Casey's background. Some were sympathetic. Others were exploitative, painting her as a troubled runaway. Questioning whether Sony was taking advantage of a vulnerable kid. "They're trying to make me look damaged," Casey said, staring at her phone. "Like I'm some charity case." "Let them talk," Sarah said. "The music will speak for itself." But privately, Sarah was dealing with her own demons. The attention on Casey had revived interest in Sarah's story. Journalists were reaching out, wanting interviews about her arrest, her fall from grace, her redemption arc. She declined every request. "You should do some press," Jamie advised. "Your story is part of Casey's story now. People want to know about the songwriter who came back." "I'm not back," Sarah said. "I'm just helping. You wrote 3 songs on this album. You're co-producing. That's not just helping, that's collaborating. You're making music again, Sarah. Own it." But owning it meant facing questions she wasn't ready to answer. About the drinking. About the accident. About whether she'd ever perform again. The thought of being on stage, exposed and vulnerable, made her physically ill. 6 weeks into production, Dale Hutchins showed up at Leon's studio. Sarah was in the control room when the intercom buzzed. Leon's assistant announced a visitor for Sarah Mitchell. Dale walked in wearing his usual uniform, jeans, work boots, and a smirk that made Sarah want to punch him. "Heard you've been busy," he said. "Saw your name in the news. Co-producing a major label album. That's a long way from repossessing cars. What do you want, Dale?" "Well, seems you never did find that van you were supposed to repo. The one with all the expensive equipment. And coincidentally, you're now working with a girl who had access to all that equipment." Dale's smirk widened. "Funny how that worked out." Sarah's pulse kicked up. "Get to the point." "Point is, I could make things difficult for you. Report to your probation officer that you might have harbored a runaway. That could be a violation. Send you back to jail. Or you give me 10% of whatever you're making from this album deal. Call it a finder's fee." Blackmail. Sarah should have expected it. "I'm not giving you anything," she said. Dale's expression hardened. "You sure about that? Because I got records of every repo you did for me. Easy enough to show that the van disappeared right around the time you started working with Casey. Won't take much to connect the dots." Leon stepped into the control room, reading the tension immediately. "Everything okay?" "This gentleman was just leaving," Sarah said. Dale looked between them. "Think about my offer, Sarah. You got 48 hours before I make some calls." He left, and Sarah's hands started shaking. "Who was that?" Leon asked. "A mistake I made 8 months ago." Sarah collapsed into a chair. "And it's about to blow up everything." She told Casey and Jamie about Dale's threat that night. They met at a dive bar in East Nashville. The kind of place where nobody cared about record deals or viral songs. "He's bluffing," Jamie said immediately. "Blackmail's illegal. If he reports you, he incriminates himself." "But what if he does it anyway?" Casey asked. What if Sarah gets in trouble because of me? Then we deal with it, Sarah said. But I'm not giving that asshole a dime. Jamie nodded. Agreed. Let me handle this. I'll have a conversation with Dale, explain the legal consequences of his actions. Most bullies back down when a lawyer gets involved. But Sarah knew Dale. He wasn't the backing down type. 2 days later, Dale made good on his threat. He called Sarah's probation officer with concerns about her activities. The probation officer, a stern woman named Patricia Chen, scheduled an emergency meeting. Sarah sat in Patricia's office, trying not to panic. Mr. Hutchins claims you may have harbored a runaway minor, Patricia said, reading from her notes. He also suggests you were involved in concealing stolen property. These are serious allegations. They're lies, Sarah said. Dale's trying to extort me because I'm working on a successful project. Can you prove that? Sarah pulled out her phone and played the voicemails Dale had left, including one where he explicitly mentioned wanting money. Patricia listened without expression. This is problematic, she said. But it doesn't prove you didn't harbor a runaway. Casey wasn't a runaway when I met her. She was about to turn 18 anyway. And the stolen property was recording equipment that Meadowbrook wasn't using. That's still theft. No, Jamie said, entering the office. She'd insisted on accompanying Sarah. It's complicated. Casey removed items from a state facility that had already been earmarked for disposal. I have documentation from Meadowbrook confirming this. She handed Patricia a folder. Sarah had no idea where Jamie had gotten those documents. But she could have kissed her. Patricia reviewed the papers. This helps. But I'm still concerned about Ms. Mitchell's judgment, associating with a minor in Casey's situation, even with good intentions, shows poor decision-making. Sarah saved that kid's life, Jamie said flatly. Casey was living in a van, being stalked by a predatory manager, and had nowhere to turn. Sarah gave her a safe place and mentored her. That's not poor judgment, that's heroic. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I understand the moral argument. But the law is the law. I'm going to recommend continued supervision and monthly check-ins. If Mr. Hutchins files a formal complaint, we'll revisit this. Understood? Sarah nodded, relief flooding through her. Understood. They left the office, and Sarah finally exhaled. That was too close, she said. It's not over, Jamie warned. Dale could still cause problems. But for now, you're safe. Back at the studio, Casey was waiting anxiously. What happened? I'm okay, Sarah said. Still on probation, but okay. Casey hugged her fiercely. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Stop. None of this is your fault. Sarah pulled back. But we need to finish this album. That's the best revenge, making something so good that Dale Hutchins becomes a footnote in our story. They dove back into work with renewed intensity. The album was nearly complete, 10 tracks that told Casey's story from survival to triumph. Leon was mixing the final songs, adding layers that made everything shine. On the last day of production, Sarah found herself alone in the studio. Casey was doing a press interview. Leon had stepped out for lunch. Sarah sat at the piano, an instrument she hadn't touched in years. Her fingers found the keys hesitantly, picking out a melody that had been lurking in the back of her mind. Words came slowly. I drove my life into a wall, watched everything I built just fall, but in the wreckage, in the pain, I found a reason to create again. It was her story. The arrest, the shame, the years of feeling like she'd destroyed something irreplaceable. And now, the fragile hope that maybe she hadn't lost herself completely. The door opened. Casey stood there, watching. That's beautiful, she said quietly. It's rough. It's honest. Casey sat beside her on the piano bench. You should record it. For the album. It's your album. No. It's our album. Our story. You've been telling mine, let me help you tell yours. Sarah's throat tightened. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. You already are. Casey's hand found hers on the keys. Let's finish this together. They recorded Sarah's song that evening. Casey added harmonies. Leon wove in strings and ambient sound. When it was done, they had a bonus track, Gasoline Heart Revisited, a reimagining of Sarah's old song through the lens of everything she'd survived. It was vulnerability set to music. And it was terrifying. But it was also real. Chapter 6 Dawn. Broke Crown, released on a Tuesday in October. Sony had orchestrated a full promotional campaign, billboards in major cities, playlist placements. A carefully curated social media strategy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 48 hours, the album hit number 3 on the Billboard charts. File Number went viral again, this time with millions of people sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity. Casey's face was everywhere. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, award show nominations. But the surprise hit was Gasoline Heart Revisited. Music critics called it a stunning comeback. Blogs wrote long pieces about redemption and second chances. And slowly, people started asking if Sarah Mitchell would ever perform live again. The question terrified her. Casey had a showcase scheduled at the Ryman Auditorium, the mother church of country music. It was her first major performance, and Sony was treating it as a launch event. Press, industry people, livestream for fans who couldn't attend. I want you to perform with me, Casey said 2 weeks before the show. They were in Sarah's trailer. Casey had been staying there while the Meadowbrook situation got sorted out. The lawsuit had been dismissed, and Casey was now legally emancipated. With Jamie as her guardian until she turned 18. I can't, Sarah said automatically. Why not? Because. Sarah struggled to articulate the fear. Because the last time I was on stage, I was drunk. Because I don't trust myself not to fall apart. Because what if I freeze up there? Then I'll be there to catch you, Casey said simply. Just like you caught me. Sarah wanted to refuse. Wanted to hide in her safe, small life. Where she couldn't disappoint anyone because she wasn't trying. But looking at Casey, this kid who'd risked everything to chase a dream, Sarah realized she was out of excuses. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. The 2 weeks before the Ryman show were pure anxiety. Sarah practiced religiously, her fingers relearning calluses from guitar strings. She went to meetings daily, the first time she'd gone consistently in months. She talked to her sponsor about stage fright and fear and the terror of being seen. Recovery isn't about being perfect, her sponsor said. It's about showing up even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. The night before the showcase, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat outside her trailer, smoking and staring at the stars. Thinking about all the choices that had led her here. Her phone rang. A Nashville number she didn't recognize. Hello? Sarah Mitchell? This is Brad Kellerman from Sony. Her stomach dropped. Is everything okay with Casey? Casey's fine. I'm actually calling about you. We've been watching the response to Gasoline Heart Revisited. The engagement numbers are remarkable. People are really connecting with your story. Okay, we'd like to discuss a solo deal for you. Nothing definite yet, just exploratory conversations. Would you be interested? Sarah's mind went blank. A record deal. The thing she'd wanted more than anything 3 years ago. Being offered to her now. I need to think about it, she managed. Of course. No pressure. Let's talk after the showcase. Break a leg tomorrow night. He hung up, leaving Sarah staring at her phone in disbelief. The Ryman was packed. Sarah stood backstage, heart-hammering, while Casey finished her opening number. The crowd was electric, young faces. Singing along to every word, phones up capturing every moment. Jamie stood beside Sarah, dressed in an actual suit for once. You ready? Jamie asked. Absolutely not. Good. That means you care. Jamie squeezed her shoulder. You've got this. Casey finished, broke crown to thunderous applause. Then she grabbed the microphone. This next song is special, she said. It's the first song I recorded with my mentor, my friend, and the person who saved my life. Please welcome to the stage Sarah Mitchell. The applause was deafening. Sarah walked out into the lights, guitar in hand, knees shaking. The Ryman was historic. Every legendary country artist had played this stage. And here she was, a washed-up songwriter with a criminal record. And 3 years of silence. But when she looked out at the crowd, she didn't see judgment. She saw Casey, standing beside her, radiating confidence. She saw Leon in the front row, grinning. She saw Jamie giving her a thumbs up. She saw people ready to listen. Sarah adjusted her microphone. 3 years ago, I made a mistake that cost me everything. I thought my story was over. Her voice was shaking, but it was steady. But this incredible kid right here taught me something. She taught me that endings can be beginnings. That you don't have to be perfect to deserve a second chance. And that music isn't about fame or success, it's about truth. She looked at Casey. This is file number. Our song. The one that started it all. They played it together, Casey's rap verses flowing into Sarah's guitar work. Their voices blending on the chorus. The crowd was silent, listening, and Sarah could feel the connection forming, that electric moment when music becomes communion. When the song ended, the Ryman erupted. They performed 2 more songs, Broke Crown, and finally, Sarah's Gasoline Heart Revisited. This one Sarah performed alone. Standing in a single spotlight, her voice raw with emotion. I burned it all down to the ground, lost myself in the flames and the sound. But from the ashes, from the pain, I'm learning how to start again. By the final chorus, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. When she finished, Sarah looked out at the standing ovation. And felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Backstage afterward was chaos. Press wanting interviews, label executives shaking hands. Fans who'd somehow gotten backstage passes asking for photos. But Sarah found a quiet corner with Casey, away from the noise. We did it, Casey said, tears streaming down her face. We actually did it. You did it, Sarah corrected. This was always your dream. Our dream, Casey insisted. I wouldn't be here without you. Jamie found them a few minutes later. Hate to interrupt, but we've got 3 more label executives who want to talk to Sarah about a deal. Also, Rolling Stone wants an interview. And, she grinned, someone from the Grammys called. Both of you are being considered for Best New Artist. Sarah laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. That's insane. That's success, Jamie corrected. Get used to it. Epilogue 6 months later. Sarah signed with Meridian Records, the independent label that had offered Casey creative control from the start. She liked their philosophy, artist first, commerce second. Her debut album, From the Wreckage, came out in April to critical acclaim. It wasn't a massive commercial hit like Casey's, but it didn't need to be. It was honest, raw, and real. Everything Sarah had learned about survival and redemption poured into 12 tracks. She performed a small tour, nothing huge. Just intimate venues where she could talk to the audience. Share her story, be vulnerable without the pressure of stadium expectations. Casey's second album was already in production. She'd bought a house in Nashville and converted the garage into a home studio. Sarah still co-produced, but now Casey was leading sessions. Confident in her voice and vision. Dale Hutchins had tried one more blackmail attempt. But Jamie had shut him down with a cease and desist letter. So legally devastating that he'd backed off permanently. Last Sarah heard, he'd lost his repo business and moved to Florida. The Meadowbrook Group home had shut down after an investigation exposed systemic abuse. Casey had testified, her voice steady, helping ensure it would never hurt another kid. On a warm June evening, Sarah and Casey sat on Sarah's trailer porch, guitars in hand, working on new songs. The barn where Casey had once lived was now a proper studio. Sarah had renovated it with her advance money, turning it into a space for young artists who needed a safe place to create. "I got an email today," Casey said, "from a girl in foster care in Memphis. She said, file number, made her feel seen for the first time in her life." Sarah smiled. "That's what it's all about." "Yeah." Casey strummed a chord. "Hey, when we are a famous old ladies, are we going to tell people the truth about how we met?" "You mean the part where I was repossessing your home, and you were living in a stolen van?" "Exactly that part. Absolutely. It's a great story." They laughed, and Sarah felt that same sense of possibility she'd felt on the Ryman stage. The future wasn't perfect. There would be hard days, struggles, setbacks. Recovery was ongoing. Success was fragile. But they'd faced darkness and found their way to dawn. And that was enough. The end. Did this story inspire you? Subscribe for more tales of courage, redemption, and finding light in the darkest moments. New stories every week about real people overcoming real struggles. Because everyone deserves a second chapter. Thank you for listening to our channel.